Mary right here. For those of you who don't know us, many of you do already because for many years, Mary has been active on the school committee along with all kinds of other committees. Anyway, thank you all for coming. That's the first thing. The other people I want to thank are our candidates because this is what they're proposing to do or what they're appear to be interested in doing is not an easy job, but it is very rewarding. Having had the experience myself a number of years ago. Again, Tom Gore and Mary Stanton. Mary, you want to say anything? No, you want to hold up on that, all right? I want to mention a couple of things. You each have before you, or you should have on a seat near you, or if you need one, come get one, a sheet that looks like this. On the front of the sheet, it has the names of the candidates. And the names on as they are arranged on that sheet are the arrangement, they will be on the ballot. That's the way the names will be arranged on the ballot. And starting at the left-hand side of this table, these are your candidates up here. That's Margarita, all the way over on the left, and the people are seated on the same order in which they appear on the sheet. So the last one over here on this end is Chris Whitman. So that should enable you all to tie a face together with their name as we move through the evening. Okay. Two things with respect to order I would mention. Oh, before I go any further, on the back of the sheet that you have, there are the guidelines that Mary and I will be using this evening. Okay, for the conduct of the meeting. There are two matters of order that I would like to mention. One is, from time to time, a moderator, in order to expedite a meeting, will use the term without objection, blah, 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 and then hearing none. If either of us uses that expression, and this would be in the context of making a conclusion, for instance, without objection, we'll move on to the next question or whatever. If you hear that expression and you have an objection, that's the time to object right there. Because if moderator does not hear or see an objection, he will move on and avoid the need for a vote or anything else. Okay, so don't hesitate to interfere if you would like to ask a question or object. The other thing is, if you're reading your rules on the back of the sheet and we aren't doing it the way you think we should be doing it, don't hesitate to stop us. Raise your hand and say, point of order. Okay, and that's what a point of order is. It has a higher priority than any other discussion on the floor, and we resolve that question or issue you have before we move on. Is everybody clear on that? Okay, so if you hear the expression without objection, we're going to move on. Hearing none, boom, that means you're going to move on. If you object, so state. We have set some seats further apart than these on the floor for the purpose of giving people who had health concerns to separate themselves somewhat. We do have an issue tonight with the mics. I had hoped to have a mic, portable mic, that I could walk around to each of you and let you ask your question without you having to get out of the seat. Getting out of the seat and walking up to a mic intimidates a lot of people, and you're uncomfortable with that, and we don't want to do that. But we're going to try it. You'll be able to ask your questions from the seat, and Virginia, who is taking the meeting for us, if she's not getting a reading on the verbal, then we do have the option of a mic up here for you to use, or we might take that mic to you if we get it close enough to you. Have any questions? So people can hear. What was the other thing? I think that's it. All right. So we're going to start and let the candidates make a few introductory remarks, introduce themselves to you, again in the order in which they appear on the sheet, and then we will move on to questions.
So our first candidate on the list, only because of the alphabet, is Margarita Orbital.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah, that's cool. Before I tell you a little bit about myself, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that signed my ballot form and gave me the opportunity to sit here and run and speak to you and answer your questions. I really appreciate your support and your trust. I grew up in Stanford and spent most of my summers on West Shore Drive at my grandparents' cottage. Phyllis and Roger Mitchell, both who have passed this year. My grandpa just passing last week. So with knowing that that was coming, husband Terry, who's sitting over here, we made the decision to sell our home on H Road and purchase the cottage on West Shore Drive. And we're now turning it into our forever home. So that's a really nice way for us to be able to keep that in the family. And that cottage has actually been in my family since my great-grandparents, if you knew the Gillets. I have no political training or experience, but neither did our forefathers. What I do have is a strong desire to listen to my neighbors and to become more involved in the community that I really love and appreciate. I'm a strong listener, and I really pride myself on listening with the intent to understand. And I think that's exactly what a community like Acton can thrive in. Not only do the selectmen need to hear your thoughts and concerns, but we need to understand them at their core. And I can promise that while I may not agree with everything on a personal level, I will certainly do my best to understand where you're coming from with respect. And so with that, I look forward to hearing your questions tonight and continuing to earn your trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Hello, my name is Michael Mers. I moved to Acton 16 years ago. My wife and I put 4 kids through this wonderful school. We moved to Acton, 1 primarily for the low taxes, and 2 for this great school. I'm currently the code officer in Shapley, and since starting that job, I've become familiar with town politics and how town halls operate. Find it very interesting. At that stage of my life, mid-40s, that you become more politically aware, and I'm conservative. Look at life through that lens, and as selectmen, I would look at day-to-day considerations through that perspective. So if that's something resonates with you, I think I'm your candidate. Thank you.
Yes, good evening. My name is Tom Murray. My wife Kathy and I have owned a home in Acton for the past 20 years. About 2 years ago, I decided to retire, and we've made Acton our permanent home. When I retired, I was CFO at Tufts University. I'll speak up.
Here's the mic.
Oh, thank you. Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you. When I retired, I was the CFO at Tufts University. I've been there for 35 years. As the CFO, I was basically responsible for all things financial. When it came to budgeting, planning, procurement, handled the investment portfolio for quite a while in the endowment, human resource matters, employee benefits, management of the research program, which was a very significant program, and all of the contracting and compliance around that. I think I have some skills that can be of value to the town. Scale clearly is a little different, but the same principles apply. At a university, I don't know if you know much about them, but it's all about creating consensus. The faculty have a great deal to say about how things run. That's not that much different than what the residents of Acton have to do. Basically, we're here to fulfill your goals and your wishes as expressed through the ballot box. And that's basically what I did as the CFO previously. This forum feels a lot like how I spent my time at faculty meetings. We had a large number of faculty, almost 1,500 of them, and I would spend a great deal of time going to faculty meetings. And those were not always the most pleasant situations to attend, especially as the finance guy. Everyone was looking for additional resources, or they all had their great ideas, and they wanted to make them a reality. And the purpose of those sessions was to help clarify what the possibilities were, what the opportunities were, what the limitations were, and to make sure that we didn't spend money that we didn't have, quite frankly. And I think I was able to, through that dialogue, help everyone sort of understand what those limitations were, and when decisions were made, why they were made, and how those might be the best interest for all. I think I have always spent my career in, I'll call them mission-based organizations. Organizations that support the community or some kind of special interest, almost a nonprofit setting. And quite frankly, I've always gravitated to that. And I think with this, about 6 months ago, I was elected to the Warrant and Finance Committee. Gave me an opportunity to begin to get involved in understanding the finances of the community. Then I joined the Capital Planning Committee. When this opportunity became available, it just seemed like a natural extension of how I could take my skill set and provide some benefit to the community in ways that perhaps we don't have those skills today. And so, happy to be here tonight. Thank you for being here, and be happy to answer your questions later.
Hello, my name is Christopher Whitman, and I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight to support all of us that are up here. I'll tell you about myself. I live in a house that's been in my family for many, many years. Lived there with my 3 girls, 1 boy, a dog, and my wife. Born and raised in Maine, lived in Acton now for 6 years. Traveled away for college, been to Vermont, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania. When I came back home, I started working with the rec, became the rec director for a couple of years, and left that because we had our last job. We kind of got busy and wanted to spend some time with my son and just do some stuff like that. And now I'm on the planning board, and I'm the chairman of the planning board, and my boyfriend's a daycare in town as well. So we're active with more kids and try to keep up with that. And I have no agenda. I just want to be here to listen to people and, you know, put their ideas and opinions out there, you know, for the townspeople. And so I think everybody should get a fair shake.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, it's going to be question time here to start with, and the way this is going to work is you will be asked to address your initial set of questions to Margarita, but every candidate that's before you will have an opportunity to respond to that. Well, I'm getting it. What's better?
I think it'd be better if they use the mic up front.
Move the
If they
mic.
No, I think it'd be better if they use
Oh,
the
you
mic
use
up front,
okay.
yes.
It would be better
Yes.
if you are uncomfortable using the mic, wave your hand and I'll try and get a mic to you because I know how intimidating that can be. We're going to start this with Mary moderating the session, addressing questions to Margarita, and then after Margarita has a chance to answer the question, the other candidates will have an opportunity to respond to the same question, and that can go around in a circle a couple of times if we're gaining information by doing that. So I'll sit down now, and Mary, she's much prettier than me.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
So that the questions will be addressed to the candidate, where number 1 is that the questions will be addressed to the moderator.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Oh, it's
Thank
me,
you.
and I'll address it.
Right. Always address the chair.
All right, so any questions? Do we have any questions for any candidate at this point? Oh, so questions only for Margarita first? Okay. Richard Nass, if you could go to the microphone.
Good
evening. So for one or for all, do you support permitting a recreational marijuana establishment in the town of Acton? The permitting process would involve a town meeting, but the question is, as you as a selectman, would you be in favor of a recreational marijuana store, basically?
Do you want me to answer that first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I do not know if I would permit that or not yet, because in order for me to make that decision, I would have to know what the town wants. So it would take coming to the town meetings on Wednesdays and hearing and seeing what you guys want. And I would make my decision based off of that. Because it's not just my town, I'm not the only one that lives here. So whether I want it or not personally doesn't necessarily matter. It's what the majority of the town wants, in my opinion.
Okay, we'll ask Mike to answer that.
I would not be in favor of the recreational marijuana facility in there.
Tom?
I'm not interested in having a recreational marijuana facility in town. I believe there was 2017 a vote by the town meeting to put a moratorium on having for I believe 3 years. At least that's what I understand. And that's now up. So I think if that's going to come up and there's an interest by someone to have one in town, I think it needs to come back to the town meeting for a vote. But for me personally,
And Chris?
I don't think it should be allowed in the town of Acton. It's, you can go to Lebanon, you can go to Sanford. Lebanon's in a mess right now with it, and I know the moratorium's actually up, so we actually could probably address that in the town relatively soon.
Any other questions? Did you have a question?
I have a question, and all four, I like an answer. The state puts on a program for new selectmen, and I feel very strongly that whoever gets elected should go to that class.
All right, so the question is, and we'll start with Mike this time. You don't mind me calling you Mike?
That's not.
Michael, Mike. Yeah, so would you take the new selectman class?
Exactly, yes, through MMA, there's all kinds of classes for town government, and I will be taking that class specifically for selectmen.
Tom?
absolutely yes.
Chris?
Yes, as well.
Margarita?
Absolutely. Any opportunity to gather more information and learn, I'll take it.
Come on, people.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for running. I would like to address the question to all of you. What do you feel is the biggest concern facing the residents of Acton, and briefly describe what you do to fix it?
Okay, so we'll start with Tom.
I think the issue of growth in the community is one that I've heard a lot about as I've been talking to various people, a number of people around the community. I think it's great that the planning committee has already taken that subject up. It's been beyond 10 years since the last comprehensive plan that was adopted. I think it's critical that the town have an opportunity to weigh in, citizens have an opportunity to weigh in and decide how they think that the town should grow for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And whether that growth should be limited through particular zoning ordinances or whatever, I think those are all things that ought to be considered. I think it's one of the critical issues facing Acton right now.
Chris?
I would say with Tom, the growth is one, keeping the historical value of the town is important to everybody, from those comprehensive plans, but, selectmen, you actually have to make a subcommittee to do comprehensive work to find out more information since it's been over 10 years since the last comprehensive plan's gone.
Margarita?
Definitely would agree with them, about the growth. The town is changing quite a bit. We've got a lot of new residents from out of state, not just out of town. And we need to find a way to merge old and new. So I think that's definitely an important topic that's on the horizon.
For me,
Yeah. Go ahead.
for me, probably just being vigilant on the mill rate for taxes, just trying to keep that low and, stay on that. That's kind of the biggest issue I see today.
Go ahead.
Could you ask the people up on the mic, please?
Okay, could you please speak right into the mic? Take it in front of you when you talk.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for running and for doing this program. I think we all see nationally that there is so much polarization in our country and lack of decorum and civility in public discourse. And I think, from my perspective, I see that here in our town, our meetings, not the town meeting, select board meetings. So my question for the panel is, I don't want to hear just, that you think civility is important. I'd like to hear what steps you will take to foster or ensure civility if you're elected. Maybe give an example of a situation you have dealt with a difficult person or personality. How did you de-escalate it? How do you ensure that we have civil discourse at our meetings? Thank you.
On this one, we'll start with Chris.
That's a good topic, Bernard, thank you. To keep everybody calm, it's, you have to have an easygoing manner, and understand people and the discourse. No one's ever going to get along because everybody's introducing their own ideas. But we have to understand to take those ideas and blend them together and get one major idea, even if it's wrong or right. You're not going to agree with everybody. And to just, if people get out of hand, we can end the meeting, we can table something to get a better answer for people. And that way it doesn't cause any, civil discord and whatnot.
Yeah, Margarita?
I think one of the ways to de-escalate that type of situation is to make someone feel heard and understood. I think people tend to get more defensive and louder when they don't feel like they're being heard. And the other thing is to not react. I have worked very hard in my time here on Earth to bring down my level of reaction and to listen first, hear where they're coming from, and then react appropriately. I have no patience for jumping to conclusions and reacting out of emotion. One of the best pieces of advice I was ever given in my younger years was to take the emotion out of it when responding. And that's what I've worked really hard to do.
Okay, we'll pass it on to Mike. Yeah, get that microphone right in front.
I think Robert's Rules of Order should be maintained at every public meeting. It's the responsibility of the chair to enforce those rules, and with that, typically meetings can be handled a little bit better, more efficiently, and everybody gets to have their say. That's what I think, just following the training that these municipal officers can receive. Thank you.
And Tom.
Yes, I think this is a really critical issue now. Having been on the Warrant Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee, and had an opportunity to attend other meetings in the town, in particular select meeting, I think The overarching guiding goal ought to be mutual respect at these meetings. We're all in this office to get elected because the townspeople have put us there. This is not so much what we as individuals want to see happen, but to understand what the residents of the town want to happen. And I think we need to create more opportunity for dialogue and for listening in the town. There used to be, as I understand it, the selectmen would have office hours. If I'm elected, I would like to open that back up. And if there's a place in the town hall where I could be there on some regular basis, I would like to do that. So that people could come in with or without an appointment, walk in, have an opportunity to explain what's on their mind. I may not be able to do anything about it, but at least give you an opportunity to talk it through. And then maybe I could be in a better position to represent that issue if you come to the select board with a particular concern or something you'd like to see done. Hopefully I'd be in a better position to respond and understand what it is. But I think people need to be treated with respect at the meetings. That's critical, and that's something that I've always done in my professional life. It's difficult at times, but you just can't lose it. You just can't lose it with the residents of the town. You need to be respectful, and that's what I would plan to do.
All right, so if there's any other questions for Margarita, I know it ended up being for the whole panel, but if there's anything specific for her, otherwise we'll move on to Mike. Anybody has any questions for him? He was our code enforcement officer. I don't know if you had any issues. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Sorry.
That's fine. You can come back up here if you want. You're a lot prettier than I am. You're a lot sharper than I am. Well, I think. What's that? Okay. At this point, we're going to start by asking questions of Mike Demers. Everybody will have an opportunity to ask those. And this is the idea that we start with one person. We give one person a chance to start out with these questions. So, again, any specific questions for Mike Demers? Everybody will have a chance to answer them. Go ahead, Richard.
Mike, what role do you feel the selectmen should play in enforcing the zoning ordinance?
Zero.
I agree.
I agree as well.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you. All it takes is the art of conflict resolution in a democracy. You need a good diplomat to be a good selectman, a good diplomat. Having said that, I'll move on. Another question for Mike. Any other questions specifically for Mike? No, Scott.
I'd like you to address what specific ways you think that we could improve town government.
Well, I think just the participation, really. The more people are participating in local government, I think the better off we all are. That's why I'm getting involved. You know, like I said, more politically aware now than I ever have been, and just want to do my part.
I've managed people for 30 years or so. My last job, there were about 100 people in my organization. And what I've come to learn is that no one person can know everything. That you need to make sure that there are good people in place in the various functions in the organization. They have the resources to do the job, and they're empowered to do the job. Micromanagement, to me, is just not something that I think is very conducive to people feeling motivated and actually carrying out their job in an effective way. I think there's been a number of people that have resigned from committees, as I understand it, over the last couple of years. I think that indicates that there's some kind of issue. And I'd like an opportunity to delve into that, understand what that issue is. I think the committees have been put in place, very good people on it. These are individuals that are volunteering their time and trying to do what's right for the town. And I think they need to be afforded a certain level of respect and support in carrying out those jobs.
Excuse me. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
To better off the government, I think, first of all, get some new blood into the town. You know, I used to go to these meetings, the same group of people all the time, get the younger kids involved, and, you know, they're eventually going to have to take over for, you know, all of us older folks and elders of the town. And us younger people have to listen to the elders of the town to help, because they've been there and they've been through the process of government. We have to respect what they've done in order to continue to make this government better in the town.
Thank you, Chris. Margarita?
I think it's
Pull it
good.
closer. Pull it closer. Sorry.
Can you hear me? I think it's fair to say that the people who sit on the board care about the town, and they're involved, but I think we need to bridge the gap with the participation of the community. For instance, town meeting is held, you know, on maybe a Saturday in the middle of summer, and you kind of got to be there all day. And when you look at the amount of people that actually go to that, it sits between 1% to 2% of the community. So we need to find a way to do it better or different, where we're getting a better representation of the community to vote on millions and millions of dollars of budget and great big decisions. So we need to find a way to bridge that gap.
Thank you, Margarita. Folks, I just want to remind you that you do have the opportunity to ask follow-up questions. If you don't get the answer that not the answer you want, but if you don't get your question answered, we will. Is this a question for Mike? Sure. Okay. I'll start with Mike. Thank you. You're right back.
What is your opinion and how would you affect it regarding transparency in government and also the need for or against charter for the town?
As far as the charter goes, I don't have an opinion on that yet. Some I would look into, given some material to look at. But the first part of your question? Transparency. Transparency in government, great. Was, you know, there's all the documents in the town hall pretty much are public record. Anybody can have, you know, access to that. I think the Acton with their televised meetings and everything, there's plenty of transparency there. Really any reasonable request as far as information from the town hall, I think it's readily available. I don't think that's an issue at all.
I'll take them in the same order. I think with regard to the charter, I think we need one. As someone who's been trying to, you know, comb through the websites and learn how business is being done in the town, I found the website difficult to follow, difficult to understand necessarily what the practices and processes are around our various committees, what are the rules governing those, what's the organizational design of the town, who reports to who supervises who. I think I've done some research on charters. I think they can be extremely complex or fairly simple. But I think there are templates out there that could hopefully streamline that process. But I think bringing that all together so that it's not cumbersome and difficult for people to really understand how government works in Acton, I think it's a very important document. And from what I understand, many towns have it. So it seems to me something we should definitely do. And the second part of the question was, I'm sorry.
Transparency.
Transparency, thank you. I think transparency is critical. I gotta tell you, in my work life, that's what it was all about. I had people, donors, giving money to the institution. They wanted to know how their money was being spent. I had parents who were paying tremendous tuition dollars. They wanted to know where their money was going. Students, the faculty, the government. Everybody was always looking for information. I think it's critical that an organization like this be viewed as very transparent. When it's not, even when there's not an issue, I think people get suspicious there's an issue, simply if there isn't enough transparency. So I think that's something that elected officials and town administrators really need to practice and carry out on a regular basis.
The charter I'll actually would have to look into and do some research on to give an honest answer. Transparency is just to be honest with people. Through the government, you can't sit there and lie to cover up another lie, then your lies get misconstrued. Just be honest and open with people, and what goes on in town hall and what doesn't go on town hall.
With the charter, I don't know enough about it to make an opinion. I would absolutely need to learn about it. And with the transparency, I would say that both my strength and my opportunity is honesty and truthfulness. I am very honest. Anyone in my family can attest to that, both for the good and the bad. And it's at the core of earning your trust. So I definitely think we can be transparent. From what I have seen and from what I know, I think that Acton does a good job of being transparent. We post, the recordings of the selectmen's meetings, and they seem to give us as much information as they can. So based on what I know and what I've seen, I believe that we are doing a good job of transparency, and I work to ensure that we continue to do so.
Any follow-up questions to that, or? Go ahead, you have a follow-up question too?
I guess my question wasn't quite that clear initially. What I'm talking about transparency is how it's delivered or displayed by the town. The town website, in my opinion, is grossly inadequate. And as far as getting access, whether or not Ken personally believes that the town should be transparent. But what I'm getting at is whether or not the town residents actually have ready access to the information without having to take off work in the middle of the day to get to the town office for their limited office hours to personally ask to get something, where most towns have it right online. We haven't done that. And it's not like this is 1985 and computers are just coming out. So that's what I'm looking at. What will you do, and how important do you think it is to actually have the information readily available? People can just sit at home, and maybe then they'll be a little bit more involved with the town once they see actually how the town works and who they have to talk to and what's going on.
We'll start with you again, Mike.
So if you're asking for information, hopefully you know what you're asking for. I get some requests from my office saying, give me all your building permits. You tell me which one you're looking for, and I'll give it to you. Other than that, the files are here, you can go through anything. So in one particular case, it was a lumberyard wanted to sell lumber and have me tell them who's building a house. That's not my job as code officer. One could argue I'm not beholden to the lumberyard. But I don't think there's an issue with the website. I don't think there's an issue with the office hours. If you know what you're looking for, it's readily available. And you don't have to go in physically, I don't believe. I think you can write an email and have that information delivered to you.
As I said earlier, as I've looked over the town website, I do believe it's outdated, and it doesn't reflect sort of the current state of the art that websites are develop in many, many businesses and governmental organizations throughout the country. I think the people in the town hall do a great job. I think they try very hard. I get the sense that there's too much reliance on paper, and things are not available in sort of electronic form that they ought to be. That's my sense. I'd like an opportunity to understand that better. I also think there are, my observation, too many executive sessions that take place in the selectmen meeting. I think, I know there are legitimate reasons for having executive sessions, but it seems that every meeting there are multiple executive, one or maybe multiple executive sessions, and I think we should keep those very brief and infrequent.
Well, being able to work 45, 50 hours a week, understanding, the question of, getting stuff out online. The last time I looked at the website, they had pictures from ice storms and stuff like that. Nothing to get paperwork to people, like if I want to come home, get a registration, try to do it online, you can't, you gotta go to the town hall. They do a great job up there, they do their best. That's what we ask of them. But if we had the access online to get the paperwork out to the people that work and stuff, I think that'd be beneficial.
Thank you for clarifying the question. I do agree about the website. I definitely think it's a bit outdated. How do we fix that? Do we have a dedicated social media person, right, who takes care of the website and any other kind of online information? Do we have a little town paper? Do we do mailers? I'm not sure how best to address that. But I would agree that it needs tweaking of some sort. Again, my immediate thought just sitting here would be a dedicated person, I don't know, maybe 2-3 hours a week, spend a little bit of time, update the website, put out some information. I'll tell you, if it wasn't for a personal email that I got, because I am a candidate, or Facebook, I wouldn't have known about tonight. I don't know if they have a mailer in the town hall. I haven't gotten there in the past couple weeks. And the only place that I've seen this posted was on the unofficial What's Up and Active in Town page on Facebook. So I don't know how everybody else knew about it.
I just comment on that, just so everybody's aware, the town doesn't have an obligation to post this. It's nice if they do, and always in the past they have, okay? But this technically is a private function. It is not a function of the town or the municipal government. Okay, this is sponsored by Mary and myself. Sorry. Any other questions that anybody would like to address? Mike, now we're getting more questions. You are, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Bernard,
wait, excuse me. I have two people raising hands who have not had an opportunity to ask a question yet. Want to go? Beg your pardon? Age before beauty. Who was beautiful? Who was, somebody else went over there?
Lisa Suzanne.
Somebody else did. Anybody have a question over there? Go ahead.
Outside of the regular select board meeting each week, how many hours do you anticipate dedicating to the position if you were to get it?
As much as is required based on the content of the week, whether it's emails that you receive as selectmen, if you've got to get to the town hall and review certain documents, or get to the town hall and sign off on stuff. I envision, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours a week plus the meetings. That's my guess, but I would dedicate as much as required.
Well, I am retired, so my wife would probably like to see me at home, but I am. And as I mentioned, I have an interest in having office hours. How much? It really depends on the level of interest. If people have an interest in coming in and talking, try to make myself available as much as I can. I think initially it may be a fair amount. I have a lot to learn. I've never been in public office, in an elected office like this. But I think I'm a quick learner. And it was mentioned that there are courses that are available. I certainly would take advantage of those. I've already started doing a fair amount of reading since I decided to run for office. It looks like there's a lot. I think it's critical that the selectmen fully understand the state laws and regulations. And those are rather extensive. I think it's just incumbent upon the selectmen to be able to make sure that they understand what those are and can represent them well to avoid issues and problems. So it's not going to be full-time, but I suspect there'll be a fair number of hours at least initially.
I don't shut my phone off at night, so, and I only sleep 4 hours a night, so I can work all those other hours that I'm up, and, you know, when I'm dead, I'm dead. I don't have any more time to work, so that's the way I see it.
I do sleep more than 4 hours a night. The real answer, well, excuse me, my opinion is as much as you need us to work, right? As much as we can be available. My slightly uneducated guess would probably be somewhere around 8 to 10 hours a week. The meeting, answering emails after work. I am fortunate that I have a very flexible job Monday through Thursday. And I'm able to come in to the town hall if I need to. And then I'm even more fortunate that I work from home on Fridays. I work from home on Fridays. So that allows me even more flexibility to have office hours at the town hall and to make myself available for those that need it.
Any additional questions for Mike? Or should I turn this back to this pretty young lady sitting beside me? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
This is more of a follow-up question. You were asked how you would improve town government. And for the majority of the answers that we heard was more involvement, new blood, participation of the town. Can you give us examples of what you would do to get that participation and that more involvement?
I'm getting on the first call. Basically, just you're talking. I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I would just, let people know that this is being talked at during town meeting or during a select board meeting, and if it's interesting to you, come and speak your mind, because during that public session, that's the time to be heard. Really, just efforts by me just would be informing people what's really going on in town. Thank you.
I think a place I would start is focusing on the committees. They've had a rich history of having people participate and volunteer and doing a lot of the legwork and day-to-day work that needs to be done that feeds the work of the selectmen and the town administration. And as I said earlier, I think those committees really need to be empowered in order to carry out their work. And I think if people understand that, hopefully we'll have people come back and be interested in participating in those committees. Many of them have resigned over the last couple of years, which I think is indicative of a problem there. And so I'd like to focus on that.
My example would bring, getting the younger guys involved and younger ladies involved. I just, I work with a lot of younger kids, so they gotta listen to me for 8 to 10 hours, so I can just beat it into their heads, basically, to get involved, before they lose the sense of our own government that our elders have worked hard for.
What comes to mind first for me is that yearly town meeting that we do, that you sit at outside all day in very limited, nice New England weather. I would like to see that turn into ballot style if we can. I didn't go to the last one because we have very few limited nice days in New England and I want to enjoy mine. But if I could have gone to the town hall and voted on a ballot, I absolutely would have done that. And I think that just that alone, we would see a lot more participation in voting.
Thank you. Are there additional questions addressed to Mike, or should I ask Mary to come back up here? Bernard, I'm sorry.
This kind of goes to transparency and efficiency in government. Presently, town employees are not allowed to speak with members of boards and committees. The board member, committee member has to go to the town administrator. She relays the question to the employee and gets back. Committee members, board members are not allowed to have an employee come and meet with the board or committee unless the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, approves that. What do you see as the advantages or disadvantages with that policy? Is it a policy you would want to see changed, or would you continue? Thank you.
Well, I guess first I would recognize that a committee is several members on a committee are just individuals outside of a committee, outside of a meeting. They're just residents like you or I, and you wouldn't be able to talk or make any decisions, act on anything outside of a meeting. So I guess the theory behind directing all traffic through the administrator is to ensure that nothing is done or said that shouldn't be said or appropriate.
As a member of the Warrant and Finance Committee, I can speak about that experience. And I would acknowledge what Bernie has said, that basically those are elected individuals to that committee. These are not appointed, they've been elected through the town processes, voting processes. And I believe they should have unfettered access to the information they need in order to carry out their job. Now we've got to be respectful to make sure that we aren't bombarding the town employees with, many people coming to them asking repetitive or conflicting questions. And that's where I think the chairman of the committee can play a useful role. But I think it is appropriate if we have a question about the financial statements and the audit, for the finance committee to be able to ask questions about that, for the Warrant and Finance Committee, to be able to ask questions directly to those people who have those responsibilities. And to do it in an exchange like that, I find not very helpful at all. Everything is structured. You have to put your questions in writing, and you'll only get answers to the questions that you ask. So often when you get into a discussion, there's a give and take and there's a dialogue, and you get a better understanding by all parties about how the information should be used and carried out. As elected officials in the Warrant and Finance Committee, I don't think there should be anything that's sort of off limit with regard to finances, that they ought to be able to sit and talk to the treasurer or talk to the town administrator, talk to the fire department to find out what their needs are. I think that's all, quite frankly, very critical in order for them to be able to do their job.
I'd probably keep that in place just to the fact that, if you bring in an employee and the committee wants to talk to the employee, make sure that, that the employee knows what's going on, and, the Board of Selectmen, if they're paying attention, there's supposed to be liaisons to committees. You should be at meetings. You save some money by just, maybe being a soundboard for the employee or the board, and get your questions in and answers that way, instead of wasting that employee's time, who's worked all day to come to a board meeting that we're running at nighttime. So I can kind of see it's a give and take there.
I think there's some pros and cons that can be made for for changing it and keeping it the way it is. I think as far as keeping it the way it is, I think we're trying to uphold the integrity of making sure that no questions or conversations are had that could be construed as inappropriate. So based on, again, what I know today, at this point, I would probably keep it that way unless we see a need for change. But with the town growing and things like that, at this point, I would probably say to keep it the way that it is for integrity purposes.
I should have included this as part of the question. Given that the town administrator is also a town employee and reports directly to the select board and may feel restrictions about what he or she can do in terms of how they ask the question, what they ask. I mean, do you see this as potentially an additional filter or impediment to transparency, to the functionality of committees? If a town employee cannot directly relay concerns that they see to the boards, if a board cannot directly ask a question without going through a filter of someone who reports to the select board, to their employer, do you see that as an issue at all? Thank you.
I don't think the town administrator filters information. It's simply transmitted from one entity to another. The system's working. I think it works well, and I think it's necessary to reduce or eliminate, hopefully eliminate confusion or misunderstandings. And it's always better to get it in writing if it's a written question, obviously, and get your answers that way. That way there's a paper trail, and that's better for transparency.
I think I'll stand on my previous answer. I think it is appropriate for the budget committee to have reasonable access to department heads and the town administrator to be able to ask questions and understand things. And I think the written exchange, I think is very difficult to work with.
I'm going to stick with mine with the follow-up. It's worked. It's still working, I believe, the way it is now. And I've worked with Jen when we lost our code enforcement secretary, and she did a good job relaying, messages to a fellow that we used when Noah started planning. And I don't think nothing's been filtered on that. So I think it's fine the way it is.
From what I've seen, from what I've seen, I think that I have not seen an issue with filtering information down the line. I think that Jennifer, as it stands right now, since she's our town administrator, has done a very good job of relaying any and all information, good and bad, taking any kind of personal stuff out of it. So I think she's done a great job so far. And again, for now, until I personally see an issue with it or hear of lots of issues with it, I would keep it the way it is.
Okay, did you have a question for Mike in particular or for the board?
For all, everybody.
All right, so now we're going to go on to Tom being the one to start. Yeah. Did you have a question for Mike?
Leave the question on the letter.
Right, did you have a question specifically for Mike Demers?
It was a follow-up on the same call.
Okay, go ahead.
I think part of the issue that we're talking about is private conversations being addressed directly to employees of the town versus committees that have been elected to do a function and having a public forum, because all these meetings are open to the public and they're recorded, that they have direct access to employees to be able to carry out their function. That's what I'm thinking, is versus private conversations that are disruptive to people.
Would anybody like to respond?
I agree, that's exactly correct. I don't think we're interested in, I'm not interested in the private conversations or delving into details that are outside the scope of the committee. The committee is there to review warrants and to make recommendations on warrants, in particular of financial matters. And as someone who's been developing budgets, reviewing them, improving them for many, many years, it's a conversation around that. Department heads ought to have an opportunity to explain what they need, what it is they're looking for, what are their goals, what are they trying to achieve. If that information doesn't come forward to us, I don't know how we can do our job in the warrant finance.
Everyone's exhausted on that one? All right, so we'll start with Tom getting the questions first. I guess I did it wrong with Margarita, sorry about that. Yeah, I went down the road. Okay, so you had a question, sir?
So my question is, do you, and this is for all of you, do you feel that we talked about possibly that the town needs an upgrade on their website, getting people more involved in government? Would you be for or against, and maybe why, to have an open forum on a modified website or an improved website for the town? Having an open forum where people can ask questions, make comments and concerns for the town, say for a road that's out of disrepair, or for speeders in town, or crime incidents, where in that open forum, the board members would, or all the board selectmen would respond openly on that forum so that other town residents could see the question and see your answers or opinions. And then if it needs to go to a motion for a town vote or whatever, you know, the people would escalate that. Would you be for or against, and why or why not?
Tom, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I think I would, I'd want to study and understand that better. I think having sort of an open forum where questions of a whole variety of nature would be coming into a, if I understand what you're saying correctly, into a common sort of chat room, if you will.
Yeah.
And then it would be up to town officials, elected otherwise, to try to figure out how to respond to that. You might get different members responding to that. That seems like that might not work real well, at least for me. And so I'm not sure I would be in favor of that. I understand the spirit of it, where you want to, if I understand it correctly, you want to open up the dialogue. You want people to have access to easier access. And I think that is a very important goal. Whether that's the right way or best way to do that, I'd want to study and consider other ways of doing it.
Okay, Chris?
Not being a computer guy, I'd actually be for it, because that way every voice in town can be heard on that, and we can better address the issues in town from all the people that post on it. And do we have to give you an answer on that form right away? No, because there's two other people that we have to talk to and get back to me, but I would be for it.
Margarita?
It's a great question. Part of me says, yes, I think that's fantastic. It opens up the lines of communication and allows people better access to quickly answer their questions and get their concerns. And the other part of me says, ooh, that sounds like a bad idea. It could get dangerous to go downhill real fast. So I don't have a steadfast answer on that. It's interesting. Depending on how it could be done and how it could be managed, would be key to making it work. If it could work, I think it could be fantastic. If it could work and not get too Facebooky, right? Because that can get done real fast.
And Mike?
I think the town's website is on par with other towns, municipalities of this size. I think it's meant to just be a representation of the town hall, not the town hall. I don't think all the files should be online. I don't think any forums should be online. I think it just, basic information should be posted on the website to keep people informed of what actually is going on at the town hall.
Okay, any questions specifically for Tom? Okay. Any other questions in general? Go ahead, you want to follow up?
This is a question for Tom, but for everybody. Do you feel, or this will be your personal opinion, I would say, do you feel that there's some areas in town where we're lacking on funding, or where you personally feel that you would like to see more funding for our town to improve it for everybody?
Okay, we'll start with Tom.
I think we're fortunate that we have a nice tax rate. And I think when you compare to other communities, I think the town has done a really good job of managing the tax rate and its finances. I think that's the kind of thing that I would have hoped I'd have an opportunity to hear more from the department heads about what their needs are. And unfortunately, we haven't had that opportunity. But I think, the other day at the capital planning committee, we had an opportunity for a rep from the rec committee to come in. And they're a relatively small budget. But I think they have an incredibly important function for the kids in town. And 3 volunteers that basically are doing everything themselves. And I think there's an example of maybe with some short dollars, we could have some improvement that would benefit the kids in town. The school department is sort of a separate budget. And from all accounts, seems to be well managed. The one thing that I have an interest in is understanding the reserve accounts. There's a practice of depositing money into reserve funds at the end of the year that aren't spent. And in my professional life, I've dealt with that for years. And I think it's critically important that we understand what the reserve accounts are for, how big they should get, what are their uses, and how are they governed? Is there a budget process over that? Now, there may be, it's just I haven't been able to find this information. Again, it speaks to sort of the website and the lack of information that's available for someone who is trying to find that out. But a fair amount of money is sitting in reserves. I'd like to understand why it's there and who makes decisions about how those reserve funds are spent.
School committee meets Thursday. Chris?
I just forgot the question, sorry.
If there was something financially that you would like to see for the town,
Something funded.
funding that's lacking, or we have too much of, or we're lacking, is there a personal, is there an area you personally would like to see an improvement in funding or defunding?
Growing up as my mother being a nurse, EMT, grandfather being a firefighter, I think the fire department could use some new equipment, not, truck-wise, but I'm sure, their tanks and, there's some other equipment. Like Shapley has something that Acton doesn't, that, Shapley's blowing a hill all the time, we can fund and get to that. I think that would be a good idea for the safety of the town, and, possibly, the rec needs, some help down there in the fields. I know that, being involved and talking to the rec director the other day, there's some ways that she could save money, but it'd be a initial purchase that we discussed, and I think that was a fair discussion that we had, and those are my opinions. I mean,
Margarita?
I don't have children, so I don't know as far as our school budget and what our kids need. It would be something that I would definitely want to learn about. Kids always need money. They're expensive. I would imagine we would look at that. What else comes to mind would be the bridges in our town. I know there's a couple sketchy bridges. That always seems to kind of be a hot topic. I know on the road that we live on, there's a culvert. So those would be two that I would be interested in seeing some information and possibly improvement on.
And Mike?
There's nothing in particular I would try to put money towards or take away from. I would rely heavily on the department heads, whatever they need. Not whatever they need, but, take their needs into consideration, but also if those monies aren't spent, reel it back if their departments aren't using all those funds too.
Okay, I think somebody had their hand up. No? Yeah, go ahead.
Kind of a follow-up to that. Right now, I live on a lake, but we live on the same lake over the week. But when you look at our budget and our money and our reserves, we do have a lot of money in reserves. We get more than 50% of our tax base from all the lakes in town. And it is more than 50%. And yet our lakes, a lot of them are served by private roads. Well, a lot of towns, roads in town are private roads. And private road residents of town, not just summer people, but people who pay taxes, they get the use of the dump, transfer station. Excuse me, people at the transfer station. Tells you how old I am, right? But, they go to the transfer station. Mostly, you're not going to find they have children in our school because we all know the population dwindles down come September and people with kids home. And so the numbers of, even on West Shore Drive, I think at this point, in about 2 years, we'll have 3 kids old enough to go to school. Right now, we have 3 toddlers on the entire street, a 3-mile-long street. So, they're not even getting the benefit of the school. I would ask, do you think we need to somehow include our private road residents, whether they're year-round voters or not, because the lakes are our industry. Should we include those in our roads? Should we spend our money to improve that? And, make things a lot better for the people who live in. And not only is it going to help the people, but then you get rid of things like runoff into the lakes and that sort of thing. So if anybody has an idea or an opinion of that.
We'll start with Tom.
I'm a lake resident as well, and for 18 of those 20 years, I was a non-resident. So I can appreciate some of Joyce's comments, but with regard to the private road, which is, I think, the heart of your question, it's my understanding that's a pretty long-standing practice, not only in Acton, but throughout Maine, because of the large number of bodies of water that we have. And that there is a process that has been set up through ordinance and town vote for going through a process for getting those towns accepted, those roads accepted by the town. Perhaps there's a need to take a look at that and make sure that that approval process is consistent with what the state practices are in that regard. I suspect they are, but I think it should be looked at. My understanding, it would be very expensive for the town to accept all of those roads and to bring them up to a standard so that they could be properly maintained and repaved. And so that's a very large issue that I think would need to come before the town state. A lot of history, just my limited time attending meetings, town roads are something that seem to generate a lot of interest and heat. And so I can appreciate the feelings on both sides. But I think it's a very significant issue monetarily. And I think we have to be very careful about how we approach that and make sure that we don't end up spending some money that we don't have.
Chris?
Geez, that's always a sticky subject here. Private roads, I believe most of them have road associations and they charge a fee to live there. And you're paying that fee to maintain the roads. And we could have Milton Mills Road go to a state road, but it's never going to happen. Not enough people to just pay for this road on taxes, unless you want the taxes to go through your roof. I mean, are there other options? Probably, but we probably have to research them and look into it.
Margarita?
I agree that that's a sticky question, and it is a tough one that comes up quite a bit. I don't know how to fix that other than, to your point over there, Tom and Chris, as far as going through the process of making a private road a town road, and then it gets expensive, and then we increase taxes, and nobody kind of wants that, right? They want to have more money with us spending more money. So that's a tough one. I don't know how we would address that, or how we could address that and make it better. I would like to see it better, and I'd like to learn what we can do for that.
And Mike?
I believe the town addressed this 15 or 14 years ago when they got off of the private roads, maintaining them for summer and winter. They gave most camp roads an ultimatum to bring your town up to town spec, and we'll adopt it. Otherwise, form a road association and take care of it yourself. I live on one of those private roads that form a road association. I feel I'm better off for it, and I don't think the added cost of the association is well, I believe it's a fraction of what my taxes would be if the town adopted all these camp roads. So the town should definitely stay off the private and camp roads.
Yes, go ahead.
In speaking about roads, the town has purchased 2 times a program called RSMS, which is a road service management system, which is supposed to it prioritizes using an algorithm the maintenance of our town roads. There's been a lot of man hours put into this. We are still trying to get the data put into the program in order to be able to use it. And the advantage is it takes the politics out of what roads get maintenance. So it's a critical thing that I think that we need to be doing. We have been unsuccessful in getting this program up and running. There's been, like I said, a lot of man hours put into getting it ready, going out and actually surveying all of the roads. And I would like to know how much of a priority you would put in getting that system up and running.
Tom, again, we start with you.
Sure. I think think about town roads. I suspect that's one of our largest assets and one of our largest maintenance items in the town in terms of the ongoing upkeep and cost. When you're managing the tax base and the tax rate, I think you not only got to worry about what's coming up next year, you got to worry about what's coming up the next 20 years. And you've got to make sure that you're scheduling this work in such a way that you don't end up with a surprise 5 years from now or something that you put off that all of a sudden needs to be done, and it causes a blip in the tax rate. And those are pretty standard capital planning techniques that, and I suspect the software, that's what it's, I'm not familiar with the software, but I suspect that's what it's designed to do. And I think that's very important for us to have that data, to know what our what the maintenance needs are on our roads, and how those are scheduled out over time, so that we make sure we have the money systematically set aside to cover that. We don't have to deal with it as a crisis.
Chris?
I'm not familiar with that software. I've heard about it. It touched in briefly in some of the older meetings I've watched. Does it prioritize as it goes, and how much traffic every year do you go out there and do it? Sorry, that's another question.
It looks at traffic counts, how many cars are going down the road. It looks at how many, whether the school buses are going there. We have surveyed the condition of the roads, so it takes a lot of different factors into consideration when it prioritizes. And like I said, it takes the politics out. So, the road commissioner, and our two road commissioners are absolutely fabulous, and I know they would never do this, but it takes it doesn't let them perhaps fix their French road instead of a road that would need to be done. Or, not doing their own road because they're afraid of political blowback that needs to be done. So, because I know that has happened also. So, but it takes all of those things into consideration. And basically all we need at this point is the data entry, and we can't get it done. Because we're not allowed, the road committee is not allowed into the town hall to actually do it, or the road commissioners aren't allowed to do it. It has to be done by the town hall staff. Of course, we just lost the secretary, so we're looking at probably months before we're even thinking about getting this data entry done. And it's been over 2 years now, and there's just no excuse at this point where someone else, whether it be road commissioners or the road committee, can't go in and do the data entry. So that's why I want to know what kind of a priority you would put on that, so we can start using this program that we've paid for twice.
Margarita?
I guess I'm interested in why you paid for it twice and haven't gotten it out, but,
They got, but it was erased from the computer.
yeah, interesting. In my opinion, anything that allows more, I lost my word just like you did. Anything allows to be more equitable and less favoritism. I don't know, favoritism isn't really the word we're looking for, but to take out, like I said, that emotion out of it and make things more even and allow us to forecast better. In my opinion, right now, as it stands, it seems like that's a great idea. And because roads are an important thing and they're a hot topic, right now I think it would be important. And it sounds like something that I would put a lot of effort into, especially since we pay for it. If we had to pay for it, that might be a different story, more research, but if we pay for it, I'd like to use it.
And Mike?
A computer program determining the roads, depends what kind of information you put into it, garbage in, garbage out. I would rely heavily on the road commissioners. They definitely got boots on the ground. They know the roads like better than any computer, I'm sure could. If it's a tool they're willing to use or accept the recommendation from that committee, road committee, that's great. But I don't think it should start and end with that.
Can I add to that or no?
Hold on, she has a question. Just for some information, the two road commissioners are on the road committee. They are all in favor of using this program. They want to see it up and running.
All right, now Margarita?
I'd be interested to see, to your point, if it can work together. If they can use it more as, here's some data And also, here's my eyes, let's look at it together and see if a change needs to be made and see if it's accurate and we trust that system.
Tom, you want to follow up or no?
Well, I've already said that I'm in favor of supporting it, and so,
No, I didn't know if you still wanted to add something?
no, but I'm also interested in understanding why we bought something and are not using it. So I think that's just another question that ought to be delved into. So.
Okay, it's getting late, so any other questions? We still got to get direct questions to Chris if anybody's interested. Is this for everyone?
Yes, it is. First off, just a clarification for the people who run for selectmen. A year ago, the selectmen made a policy that department heads couldn't meet without the Warren Finance Committee, without going to the selectmen's office. So historically, it's always been, you could talk to anybody. This was just something that happened in the last year. There's two things here, questions I'd like to ask. The first one is, we talked earlier about transparency. A couple months ago, the Board of Selectmen decided not to film the Warren Finance Committee meetings until they had a warrant in front of them. To me, that's censorship. That's not transparency. And as chairman of the Warren Finance Committee, I was very disappointed that somebody isn't going to be able to go on and just watch whatever said at the meeting. So the first question is, will you support that action that the selectmen took? And the second one is probably more involved. We talk a lot about our lakes in town and protecting them. We are hauling a lot of material out of this town to other states, which is taking away our resources. We're losing acreage, we're losing value. And also, by doing this, you have less filtration from the water before it gets to the lake. Would you support an ordinance, a fee for a ton or something like that on material that's taken out of the town to help protect the lakes and take care of the roads?
Start with you. For the second part, I would support a fee on the material taken out of property. We've had a discussion a couple of times on the planning board when you were there. Geez, I missed your voice too. The other part, I've done some rec meetings where I haven't had a camera due to, you know, people not being able to scheduling and stuff, and I think we had maybe one or two with planning board. And does it cause a problem with transparency? Yes, but I know, you know, for the planning board, we have a secretary, so the bills can go out in the minutes. The rec, I don't know how they're running that now, if they have a secretary or not, but when we always put minutes together and then we have them approved, so. You know, I kind of, if it's a scheduling problem, with a camera, yes. Well, so. I mean, we have nothing on the planning board that's too current. We'll be going over, you know, ordinances and stuff, so I wouldn't have a problem either way, you know.
I do like the idea about the tax on product leaving, so based on a little bit that I know, I would say sure. And as far as not recording those meetings, I guess I want to know why they stopped, if there was a reason behind it. If there's a valid reason and they're still taking minutes and sharing that information publicly, then I'm not sure that it messes with the integrity and the transparency as long as they're still sharing those minutes. If it's just as far as people not being able to readily view that, or they don't know where to go see those minutes, maybe that's a different story. But as long as the minutes are still there and they can be viewed and looked at and so forth, I don't see a problem. But I'd be interested as to why they made a decision to stop recording.
I agree with Margarita that the public meeting, if it's a public meeting and minutes are recorded, then there's no censorship there. I think the videos is just an added benefit to a lot of these meetings. That's not to say that if one doesn't get recorded or published, then that's something wrong with that, inherently wrong with that. I think, you know, for whatever reason, I wasn't part of that conversation or decision or anything. I don't know the ins and outs of it, so I can't really speak to why or why not that happened. And as far as the mineral extraction in Acton, having a per yard tax on it or something, I'm not in favor of that. That's private land, it's an allowed use. They go through planning board process to ensure that the resources are protected, there are wetlands and lakes in the area. So I don't think that needs to change.
I want to study the tax a little bit more, the levy that would be placed on that. I'd like to understand what other towns have done in that and what sort of the implications, what the pros and cons of that. Do they like that or not? I tend to agree with Mike that I think it's private land, and I think subject to the regulations and ordinance of the town, I think landowners ought to be able to carry out that business that they're doing. I do worry about the filtration issues and the impact on the lakes and rivers, or streams, I should say. So I guess I'd want to learn more about that, Dennis, and understand, you know, is that the best approach to solving the problem there? I think with the videotaping of the finance committee, that committee is populated with elected officials. These are not appointed, these are elected officials that were voted in by the town to carry out a specific job. And if there were concerns about the way those meetings were being held, or perhaps what was being said, then I think all the more reason to videotape them. If the citizens of the town feel there's something inappropriate there, they'll vote about it. And that's the process. That's the democratic process. To simply turn off the cameras for no good reason, to me, I think is inappropriate, and it felt like censorship to me as well.
Do we have any additional, first of all, specific questions for Chris? Or we're going to start with Chris on this one.
I just want all night with Mary.
You want all right, that also do. Well,
That's all I'm saying.
you're all about that?
I'm taking Mary.
I'm lucky. Go ahead, Rick. Did I see a question over there? Okay. You'll be next.
I can combine a couple of questions that were asked. We're talking about transparency, and we're talking about improving the town. Would you, as being elected selectman, be in favor of all these different committees that meet at all different times, have them give a summary? I don't know how often they meet, would it be once a month, quarterly, of what all is going on at the selectmen meetings, so that way the public that does look at the selectmen meeting would have some idea of what's going on in all these different committees.
Yes, I would be in favor of that, actually, and I think they do have that, where the committee chairmen have to come in up front of the selectmen and give an update here and there. No, I agree, I've done it once or twice when I was with the rec. I came in and gave an update. I don't know what happened to it, but I could look into it for you.
Right.
It makes perfect sense to me that we would give a brief summary of what's gone on in that month, you know what I mean, as an example. So I would be in favor of that.
Committee heads and department heads should report to the selectmen during regular weekly meetings when new information arises. What's relevant, what's not, even in written form, just so it's part of the minutes. And definitely, more information from these boards, the better.
I agree with what they said, yes.
There's a question over here. Excuse me, what's your name?
Lee Robitor.
Who?
Lee Robitor.
Mr. Robitor, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, go to the mic. Go ahead, thank you, sorry.
Thank you. I have a general question with all the growth that Acton has seen in recent years. I'm just interested in knowing how you would prioritize strategic planning for conservation in the town of Acton going forward. Again, recognizing that could have a financial impact on the town. And what is the cost-benefit analysis you go through for looking at conservation goals and objectives for the town? Thank you.
I would look into it, cost-wise, I'd have to look into it, to be honest, and then, preserving open space is a big, part, we've always had fields and farms and Acton growing up, and I still think we should be able to have some of that, because it's a natural beauty to the town.
I definitely think it's incredibly important to consider that. And I would be interested in looking at some other towns in Maine that are set up similarly to us, and that maybe they do it better, or maybe they figure out a better mousetrap, and to see what they're doing and how they're saving money, or how they're doing it while saving money or not spending as much money. So I'd be interested in checking out some other towns that are similarly set up to how we are, seeing as how we have so many events here.
Limiting growth, we do have a limited number of growth permits for new residents in the town per year. We haven't reached that limit, I don't think, in the past 10 years or so. And but as far as the natural character of Acton, I don't think that's going away anytime quickly. But there are land trusts and stuff, conservation groups that are active in the area, buying up larger chunks of property and preserving that for future generations. So I applaud that. But on the flip side of the token, if it's private land and it wants to get developed, the owner wants to develop it, they're certainly allowed to. Just because we're here now and you might want to close the barn door and not let anybody else in, I don't think that's appropriate.
I would agree with that. I like Acton just the way it is, and I'm not frankly interested in seeing a growth spurt in Acton, but as Mike mentioned, it's private land, and I think you need to make sure you have the right ordinances and zoning rules in place to make sure that if there is growth, it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's as much, it channels it in the way the comprehensive plan would identify the kind of growth that Acton would like to see, any kinds of growth that can occur. Some of that may be of interest to the town, some of it may not. And I think that comprehensive plan is the place to start. And so, but I would also acknowledge that, it's private land. And, landowners, so long as it's done within, consistent with the ordinances and regulations within the town, I think we have to acknowledge that a certain amount of growth is going to occur in the town, and we just have to make sure we do it smartly.
There was go ahead.
role of the selectman actually is. So what are your what would you be responsible for? I'd also like to know, there's been a couple instances where research hasn't been done. Who do you think that you as a selectman are responsible for that, or as ultimately what stops with you, or would you rely on someone else to do that critical research? And what set of skills do you bring to accomplish that?
I'm sorry, I didn't fully understand that question. In terms of research.
Who's responsible for the research?
Research.
You need to research laws, or whatever. Do you think that is your responsibility or somebody else's?
I believe it'd be my responsibility to do the research for you. The means forever changing their laws, and it's always a petri dish of different laws coming in, so it'd be my responsibility to look into that. Even if one meeting you can't answer it, come back to it, and the next meeting get the proper answer. Sometimes it does take time to get these answers. The other part.
Your role as a selectman and what skill set do you bring to accomplish that?
Okay, my role, the role as a selectman is to get the voice of the people, to come to a common agreement by the selectmen and come up with the ordinances, warrants and stuff like that. My ability to work with different types of people and, throughout my career in the trades and stuff, I think would be good for it, treating everybody like a customer or a co-worker would be fun with me.
As far as research and learning, it's certainly our job individually to research what we need to know as far as being a selectman goes. I do believe we have also a town attorney, right? And I believe that they would just help us ensure that the information that we have researched and is correct. So they would help keep us in line, I guess. And as far as our role in the town is to be the mouthpiece and to help ensure that the community and my neighbors' requests are carried out the way that they see fit.
I believe the selectman's role is to make decisions and act on the day-to-day, week-to-week operations of the town hall and to manage the departments to the best of my ability. That being said, yes, you make decisions. I'd like to educate myself on what's being decided or thought of or considered prior to making a decision. So it would be my responsibility to do that research. And what I would bring to this, I guess, would be, I'm an educated man. I can think things through rationally, take the emotion out of it, and do the best I can for the townspeople.
Well, I think fortunately there are 3 selectmen. They all have had different levels of experience, different tenure on the board. I think it is important for the selectmen to feel that it's individually their responsibility to understand what the regulations and laws and rules are within the state. There are resources. There is the town attorney, I believe. There's an organization, MMA, that is available to answer a lot of those questions. I believe we subscribe and pay for that service, and so I believe we are taking advantage of it. But I believe there are resources. But ultimately, it's the selectmen's responsibility. But I think, quite frankly, the 3 selectmen provide assistance to one another, because not everyone's going to know every aspect of it, and someone may have run into something. So I think working together as a group is critically important. I think the role of the selectmen, ultimately they're responsible for the effective and efficient running of town government. They're effectively the senior administrator for the town. And I believe, call it the CEO, we happen to have 3 of them as a selectman. And I think it's their role to carry out those responsibilities and to make sure that the various departments are well run, that they're being effective, they're being efficient in how they carry out their business. But ultimately, it's the selectman's responsibility to carry out the wishes of the residents as expressed through their votes, through the town meeting, and any other avenue that those come forward.
We have an additional question. Any additional? Mark?
Very quickly, no question. I just wanted to correct any misperception about my question about the policy of employees not communicating with committees and individuals on committees. What I meant to convey was my concern about adding a potential filter to the process or an obstruction to the process, not in any way to suggest that our town administrator filters information or does not do her job correctly. That was not what I intended to convey. If I conveyed that to anyone, I apologize, but it was important to me to correct that. I have total confidence in our town administrator. Thank you.
I appreciate the clarity.
I get the feeling at times that the selectmen don't seem to understand what their job is. It's not one day a week. One of you should be going to all the warrant and finance committee meetings so you could take that information back to the other 2. I served 8 years as a selectman in a small town in New Hampshire. And the last 2 years when I was chairman, I spent 40 hours a week in town hall. You people don't seem to understand. And what we need is somebody on the board of selectmen that goes to the meetings when they teach you, because you don't all know everything there is to know. You people better think about this, and maybe you'll decide you don't want to run this
I don't think we want to discourage anybody. But thank you.
Totally noted.
Welcome, thank you. Anybody else? Oh, yes, no,
Oh, yeah, and my question, do you feel the town of Acton has adequate law enforcement at present? If not, do you feel we should expand on the use of the York County Sheriff, or would you have another option you would like to see?
I don't think we have enough law enforcement in the town, to be honest. We have a contract, we share him with Shapley and Acton. I don't even think he's in Shapley half the time either, so to me, it's always money. If we're paying out $70,000 and they're paying out $70,000, we're both losing. Years ago, we used to have a town cop. I don't know if any of you don't remember him. He was a fiery little young guy. Should we go back to that? Who knows? I mean, if we're paying $70,000 to York County, what's $70,000 here? But then you gotta add benefits, inflation, we're at a 30-year inflation rate. Highest it's ever been in 30 years. So we have to also look at those aspects as well.
I would agree that we don't have enough representation here and coverage here. I'd like to see more, to your point, is it with more hours? I don't know. We split him. Can we bring back our dedicated active police? It sounds great to me in theory. It sounds like it makes sense. But at the root of it, I don't think we have enough coverage or representation. And I'd like to see that change.
I feel as though the coverage in Acton is sufficient. We are kind of, sprawled out, Acton, and the sheriff is around just enough to keep people honest on the roads. If you've ever called the sheriff's office and you get a response, you can have, a deputy there, usually within minutes. Might be 20 minutes, but it's minutes. I think it's adequate for Acton at this point.
I think our approach with the contracted police officer is pretty similar to a number of communities in the area. And haven't studied it, but I suspect it's a fairly efficient approach in terms of the cost of that service. Whether we have enough or not, I suspect we do not. I would approach the York County Sheriff's Department about what their views are on it. They see what's being done in other communities. They're professional law enforcement people, and I think they would probably have a lot of good advice for us. And some communities have gone to 2 or 3 contract officers. Whether we should have, I understand we have a part-time now, we share the chaplain, if I understand correctly. Whether we should have a full-time officer or not, I wouldn't be surprised if that would be a good idea. I'd like an opportunity to understand better what the crime rate is in the town. But I think public safety is one of the most important things that government, local government can do. People need to feel safe at home. If that's not happening, then we should do something about it.
Well, we've been at it for almost 2 hours now. Do we continue this for another 20 minutes or half an hour, or? How many have had enough? And that's your right answer. Okay? Those opposed to? Nobody's opposed. Okay, then moderator will entertain a motion to adjourn this. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would like closing.
We're going to have to stay. Yeah, I screwed up. What happened? Should be retired. No, I'm going to start this time at this end of the table, and we'll work that way. So, and I do have a timer over there.
How much time have you
5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Don't have to use all 5.
I won't take all 5 minutes. I know I was being in meetings, and I have a friend in the meeting here that needs to get out of here for the Patriots. Famous words from my work around the standing board. I don't have an agenda. I consider myself a very fair person and honest and open with people, and a great listener, and try to combine your interest as townspeople into my interest and to the town as general. Here, my family's been in the town doing politics and board members for many, many years. They've lived here for their whole lives, so I keep getting drawn back like a magnet. Proud to be it from Acton, so I want to raise my kids here and give them a life, and I think that with our town we can all do that together. Thank you.
You're probably not ready to roll yet.
No, we'll try to keep it brief. I just want to say I've had a chance through this effort to get to meet many people in town. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I've learned a lot about what people are thinking about, what their issues are. Don't find that daunting at all. I find it energizing. I think many of them are things that I think I can add value to, given my experiences and the way I approach problem solving, and the way in which I work with others. I think I can be an asset to the town. And I'll just say, I think Acton is worth fighting for. It's a great place to live. Great people, great community. And for me, that's why I'm doing it. I'm looking for that thing now that I'm retired, that I can continue to feel good about the contribution I can make. And I think this is one that fits that way. Thank you.
I'm not going to use 5 minutes, so don't worry about it.
What about timing?
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I too have made many friends in town and forged many friendships actually right here in this gym with my kids going through the school system and having sports and basketball games here and that's why I'm running is, to kind of get more involved and expand those friendships to the next group of people in my life, and that's basically town politics, I believe. So with your support, I'm looking forward to serving the town of Acton. Vote Mike first.
Well done. I'll probably use up the rest of your 5 minutes and that's it. I'll let you say.
That's all right, go ahead.
Thank you for taking your time to be here. It shows that you care and that you're probably the 1% to 2% that show up at some of these meetings. Thank you for not being shy, coming up to the mic and challenging us with some really great questions tonight. I think it'll make us better selectmen. There are only 2 things that I can promise you, and that would be on my agenda, so to speak, and that would be to listen and learn. Outside of a couple of big topics, I don't know yet what you want, so I can promise to listen and learn, and I can promise to make any decisions with the utmost transparency and integrity.
I would like to thank these candidates for putting themselves forward and attempting at least to undertake this job. It's one that desperately needs doing, and oh yeah, when is it? 14th, isn't it? Huh? Tuesday the 14th, next Tuesday the 14th, go to Town Hall. Thank you again for coming and participating in this.